I mean, it is episode 275, and I'm going to say, are you spoiled, Star Trek? Because this is going to be a secret AMA today on Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from a new improved, at least for now, Trekland HQ, for some clarity, sanity, and the big picture. Here for all things Star Trek. It is 275. I don't know. I'm thinking everybody's being pretty ho-hum these days. You know, we got Lower Decks is rolling out. People are enjoying the shows. The Easter egg podcasts are out there. Everybody's talking. Everybody's starting a podcast or a cam show. Star Trek Day rolled by. Kind of underwhelming, but still fun to see. Vegas is in our rearview mirror. New York Comic Con's coming up. DST is coming up, whatever is left of it there in Europe. We'll see. We'll see what's going on. I just have a sense that everybody's a little fat and sassy, a little satisfied. I don't know. Will Rogers said one time, you can tell there ain't no civilization where there ain't no satisfaction. And I think we've got a satisfied Star Trek community. I don't know, what's your burning issue today? What do you want to talk about? Because it's that sense. I didn't see a burning issue. Now, I've since, in the last 2 hours, come up with a couple of things I want to get into over the next couple of weeks that aren't necessarily time related, but they're very topical. So I'm good for the future. But today, and because it's 275, I thought we would do an AMA. How about them apples? I've just been concentrating on getting Portal wound up. The open house for Portal, which is free and open to everybody, is coming up in October. We'll have more on that later. Had a great time on a couple of specialty tours I did, but you're going to be hearing a lot more about the West Coast Away mission, which is the first time Terrace, Geek Nation Tours. Terrace and I have done the big tour since 2016. This is a big one, and we're adding a celebrity quotient. There we go. There'll be even more folks than those involved by the time we get there. And of course, anytime you're in LA, you can do a customized tour with me as a Trekland Trek. But that's happening. And I'm also going to have some LA Away mission treks for all the folks who want to partake, who are coming in for the cruise in February. So those are the LA Away Days special cruise dates, the day before and the day after they set sail. And I can do some custom treks if you're going to be hanging around in LA a little longer than that. But that's all for the Cruise Folks Tuesday. The West Coast Away mission is for anybody. That's a standalone in July. It's not tied into a con. But yeah, Terrace and I are going to be hitting the trail out there to talk about that. But today is all about what you all want to talk about. It's an Ask Me Anything. It's an AMA, and we'll mark 275 today and see what everybody's up to. And you know what? If you are joining us later, you really should try to make it Tuesday afternoon sometime. 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. UK time, 10 p.m. Central Europe. I do want to mention this once again. Andy's book, Boom, From Slavery to Star Trek. This is an excerpt from her big lifelong and family history book that's coming this fall, I think November. But meantime, she has a few of these special editions. It's pretty substantial. She will sign it if you throw in a couple extra bucks. You can check it out, slaverytostartrek.com. But she still has a few copies. They will get them to you. She's back in Australia now. Safely travel. Had a couple of weeks more in LA. Incredible time at Vegas. It's all, most of it's online. You can go find our entire, she did 2 Trek Files with me, recordings, and we had an hour panel. That was pretty awesome for all the folks who were lucky enough to be up there. And I'm so glad we finally did more than had her in front of 30 people in LA 5 years ago. We've had her as a guest twice on Portal 47. Melanie, whoop, whoop. Really loved last week's episode of Lower Decks. Boimler wants to be a people. Beep, beep. They thought he was a robot. I know. You can really tell Lower Decks people are noticing that they're making. Did you see the bones of the dead Doppler in the underground? They're making their own canon now. They're starting to reference their own canon as much as they are the classic shows, the predecessor shows. Yes, Picard season 3 starts February 16th. What a great delayed Valentine's Day gift. Someone noticed that was the 47th day of 2023. Oh, the Trek cruise, Stephanie Roan. Well, stay tuned. Hopefully, within the next year or two, I'll be on the cruise. But for everybody who's in town, Los Angeles this year from departing from LA, again, the site is up, it's modernized, and I apologize to those who went and were confused. It's now set up for both the day of and the day before and the day after. Joan, you caught up with the last two Trek files and you think Leonard Majlish was the most hated man in Hollywood. Well, at least in Star Trek world, if you didn't have to orbit Gene Roddenberry, who had to deal with Leonard Majlish. Apparently so. And apparently I'm still trying to find a picture of him, a photograph. Apparently his offspring, he has a son maybe I think I saw something. I mean, I would love to, have a contrite, have a pleasant conversation about their dad if we can ever do that. But there apparently he has surviving kids out there somewhere. Hey Frank, you had some time the other day, so you actually went back and watched Pilgrims of Eternity, and oh my God, that seemed like a lifetime ago again. I know. Well, it'll be 10 years. We shot it in January 2013, so episode 1 of Continues will be 10 years old. The shoot was 10 years old in just a few months, 4 months. And then now we're on the countdown to the premiere. Yeah. You can understand me being a little mixed here about wanting to celebrate. I will always treasure the work that we did and the people there. You can understand me being a little bit mixed now about just gloriously celebrating it 24/7. Of course, I wanted to reshoot the first one anyway when I wasn't dead tired and I had a little bit of prep time. But thank you for the kind words. A lot of people put a lot of work in on that series. Scott, one of the great Gene mysteries to you, how he couldn't see it and why he was actively okay with it for so long. Well, it's like good cop, bad cops. It's like he was his protector, and Leonard was there in the 70s when Gene got to, was dethroned and then got it back in the 80s. And when you get somebody you feel like is in your corner, you may not know about all the stuff on the side. And if you hear about, friction, if you hear about rough spots, Leonard Majlish was not only a notorious negotiator and a real pit bull for his boss, and I mean that in a good way. But no, he not only that, but he interfered. It wasn't just about being a lawyer with legal issues and negotiations. He actively tried to protect Gene from his colleagues, from his coworkers, from his employees. And when Next Generation came, he was an ankle biter all the years of the movie comeback time. But when you got to series with Next Gen and Gene's declining health, and especially after the first year or two, he's the chaos in Chaos on the Bridge. And it finally was banned from the lot by the Writers Guild, from the writers complaining that he was a lawyer. And why is he messing around with scripts, much less going into people's offices and messing with their stuff? And why is he submitting revised script versions and change pages when it's not what the writers submitted? When the higher up producers are getting pages from writers after he'd made changes, there was a lot of stuff screwed, but he was doing it all so that there would be, stop me if you've heard of this before, it's the theory that if you keep everything in chaos, the one person in charge, if they have their faults, if they have deficiencies, or if they're just paranoid, nothing will ever happen to them because everybody else is too busy with the crisis of the chaos of the moment that's close to them. It's like born out of paranoia when there's no need for it. But I think some of that was Gene's advancing age and the micro strokes he was having that we do now know about. Paramount Plus started in Italy. Yes, there's some European news. The GSA, not the General Services Administration, but Germany, Switzerland, Austria. Any guess how long it'll take Lower Decks to stay on Amazon Prime outside the whole series, maybe? The overhead on Lower Decks is so much smaller. The time of the episodes, but also like the human factor. There's 1 million people working in animation, apparently. But it's still not the same, and there's not as much money flowing. Sadly, the channels, the unions and guilds, and the way animation is produced is a step below the way live action is produced. You see that happening. The writers aren't even all unionized. I mean, there's no guarantees, and a lot of people get less than for doing same kind of work. Animation is still thought of as a lesser entity, and there are people right now fighting to get starting with the writing, half hour to half hour, getting the compensation up where it is and not a stepchild. So maybe because of that, there's not the push to have everything on Paramount Plus at the risk of some of the foreign, that gap where some nations are left, some countries, some markets are left without it, while the way that happened in Europe with Discovery being removed when it was about to debut to be debuting on Paramount Plus. I'm thinking that's a different vibe going on. I could be totally wrong. Let's hope. Let's hope there's nothing, sudden. Let's hope there's nothing jerky, that people aren't ripped away from mid-season Lower Decks when something comes along, and that there'll be more of a coverage issue. And of course, you've got the Nickelodeon side too. Is Lower Decks turning up on? I mean, sorry, that's Prodigy, but let's see if it can maintain a global Nickelodeon presence too. How long will CBS Paramount let season 3 Picard soak in the floodlights, and how soon will they announce whatever show will follow in its slot? I know. I was expecting that for Star Trek Day, but I don't know if it will come out even at New York Comic Con. And if not, then it'll just be a random press release. Yeah. If they announce a new show, when will it overlap the hoo-ha about what there is to roll out? Picard next spring. And then you've got Strange and Discovery, and poor Discovery. It's going to be the oldest brother, but the least followed sibling, the way things are going. Of course, things can change, and I hear good things about the 5th season. What is my favorite Gene Roddenberry pilot from the 70s? Oh, you just saw yes, Mike Farrell celebrating the 50th anniversary of MASH. Although, of course, he wasn't there until five seasons in, 6 seasons in. Oh, that's wild. 50 years of MASH, and to realize that MASH, Mary Tyler Moore, what else was it? The early kids. I'm telling you, the early 70s. We just had, there was crap, but the good stuff was so good, and it still holds up. I mean, MASH, Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart was the one that premiered, because Mary Tyler Moore was 70, and then All in the Family was 71, and then MASH was 72 along with Bob Newhart. What great shows. And and they had a little bite to them too. I was just watching the pilot to Bob Newhart the other day, and one of my favorite episodes. It's things that still make me laugh. My favorite Gene Roddenberry pilot from the 70s. I'm going to admit something here. As much as I've seen clips, I've never watched any of the Pax movies all the way through. I should. I've never watched any of his pilots. I was even going to say Pretty Maids All in a Row. I think I watched years ago, but it may have been butchered up. I never saw Spectre. I never saw Quester. And it was weird. They had those Probe was a show that they were they just did the merchandise for it at Lincoln Enterprises. I never could figure out why they were doing that, but now I know it was just a business. They were trying to grow Lincoln way ahead of the curve as a fun stuff for fans. Sell the scripts, sell the doodads. So I don't have a favorite Trek pilot from the 70s, unless it's the motion picture. Thank you, Scott. The live video version of Andy's Trek Files episode. Yes. If you didn't know this, we had video since we did our season 9 premiere with Andy, the amazing Andy Richardson, Kindred, Andrea, her full name. But we had Andy doing 2 Trek Files with us live. We got squeezed off a stage the way lots of things happened at Bally's, but we did it live at my table with John in there doing the voiceover, and Jessica Linverdi coming in to do the Femme Fatale opening live. It was awesome, and it's all on video. You can check it out there. Thank you, Scott, for bringing that up. Something a little different. It's a show, but we're doing it live, and with all that entails, and it was a lot of fun. The good thing about Quester was he went that way. Now, what's sad is Herb Wright, if you know your credits, worked the first season, and then he came back and worked 4th or 5th season on Next Generation as a staff writer and has his name on some scripts. He was going to come back in the early after Gene passed. He was going to get Quester and reboot it again and take another pass at it. And of course, Majel, this is in the era of Earth Final Conflict, et cetera, Andromeda. And Majel was totally happy to take a Gene Roddenberry property out of the files and have someone take it and run with it. And they knew Herb. And in the middle of developing it, he just died very suddenly. I don't know if it was a heart attack. I don't know what the cause was, but I just remember it was kind of the shock. And so the project also died right there. And every once in a while, I hear some talk about maybe someone wants to take the concept and update it and reboot it. My goodness, you could cast that any way you want. Looking at you, stupid Hollywood controversies. Hey, Scott, Gene's mental health state explains the TNG era Majelish. But if you're not mistaken, Gene's was friend with him for years before that. Yeah, and a client. At least since we've come across papers, at least since the mid-late 60s, do we actually know of specific story changes that made it into episodes from Majelish? It would be like a line here, a line there. I'm not talking about big story scope because those would be obvious. There's a lot of allegation. Some of these papers might be in UCLA, they might not be in the files here, and you only have people obliquely talking about it without like actual. It's hard to track unless you were a writer or you were an assistant and you were there in the room. And as the color change pages get melded into just a white copy at the end, even if there's individual dates, after a while, you don't remember unless you kind of memorialize it for yourself or your colleague does or your assistant does. But unless it was a big thing in the moment, and it helps if it was a big episode. Like it helped in the day to talk to everybody at the end, but even at the end of the season, only the 2 or 3 big moments of the year are going to come back in your memory. You can kind of go back and let's wade through, if you wrote in the old 26 episode series days, if you had 5 or 6 scripts out of the 26 or 4 or 5, and you wallow in the detail again. And if I'm sitting there and we're going back, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 3 months ago, and you might start remembering bits of what your own process was and what the room did and what you got in a fight with your showrunner, what you got in a fight with Rick or Michael or Jerry, the early people, what you got in a fight with each other when it was the chaos and they did everything they didn't do everything by conference and notes. They did everything by they circulated memos around and everybody talked to each other like it was a living email chain. Something ridiculous. It's hard enough when you're zooming along with a well-oiled machine to remember what you individually did. And a lot of the aggrieved writers from those days are long gone. The people who would come up and say, oh, I can point right here and let you know. Well, they're kind of gone. Maybe David still could, but look what happened to David. And we have a paper trail for Blood and Fire or Blood and Ice. I don't know how much of it was Leonard getting involved without just the general craziness already that was inherent in David Gerald's unproduced script. When's my interview with Terry Matalas happening? Hint. Here's the thing. I don't want to talk to Terry until Picard is out. there's a whole industry of everybody doing their cute, coy interviews. But either I get the script so I can read and then we can talk about it. But I don't want to, and I don't even want to do a 1 season, 2 season because he helped set up the second season of Picard and then left to go work on third so they could, when they basically were going to shoot back to back and not have a hiatus for anybody, including the writers. So he had to get third season whipped up. And that was more his heart and soul and his baby. Although he was there to set up the bones and the framework for season 2 with Akiva. And you overlook a lot of the rough stuff. Oh, there's always going to be conflict and negotiation. But no, it was the unethical crap that Majelish did. The really, really shitty stuff that the Writers Guild, was able to easily adjudicate. It was just sad that David and Dorothy and some of the other staff, and part of the reason for the turnover, got sucked into that madness. Hey, Dylan. No. I'm here because I'm supporting Janet. First time I've missed Salt Lake in 5-6 years since the 50th. 2016 was the first year I was in Salt Lake. And aside from the pandemic cancellations, this is my first time to miss since 2016. So I'm a little bummed, but we'll be there next year. They want me back next year when we're free and clear to navigate. Yes, Cairo. I think if we're back at the Rio, the stage schedules will feel like a real day. Oh, yes. Gene thought that they had a series order for at least 13 episodes, and then it went away. It went away. CBS wound up, they thought they only had room for one genre show compared to today. And it was like they made a choice between Apes, the series, or Quester, and they went with think how much cheaper. I mean, part of the reason they canceled Apes was because of the makeup cost of the apes. Think how much cheaper Quester would have been. You had a few Android effects on one guy. Would it be too expensive for Roddenberry to buy the rights of everything and have a Trek channel to consolidate the intellectual property? In a word, yes. He couldn't scrape up the, what was it, $500,000 to do it in 1969 for about 5 minutes before they realized what they had. And you're sure not going to do it today. Are you talking about just those pilots? Just to get the unsold pilots? Or the unbought pilots? Yeah, that could have been a topic this week. What the hell is this? Enterprise is landing, the Starship is landing. That's so, to me, that totally sounds like a committee thing. Somebody in New York, new to the franchise, thought that would be just an awesome merch line to do. And the fandom is going, is this a secret new series? Is this the clue to the post-Picard slot show? Which is actually what I thought for about a day or two. And then I'm like, no, this is some baby marketer somewhere in the cosmos of Paramount Global thought it would be a hot idea to do all this. The only one that would have fit was the Voyager's landing. Yes, Cairo, and that's just the beginning, and it's also the total symptomatic wackiness of the whole thing. And this was in a thread somewhere, and I think I made the point. Most of at least the O1, the A, and the D can land. Great trick, Daffy, but I can only do it once. Yeah. Without a space dock, the Starship is landing. Sounds about as Star Trek as Don't Call Me Shirley. Listen, thanks for joining me for episode 275 today of Trekland Tuesdays Live, the squishy pillow edition. Hey, this is from TeePublic. You can get this stuff. Thanks for joining me on 275 today. A TeePublic product there, just like everything else. Want to thank everybody for being here. Did I thank our Patreons yet? Here we go. Boom. Thank you for joining us on our Patreons. Diana Hopkin, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Blaze K, Nathaniel Robinson, Andrew Brzezinski, I should say, and Pranakasha Productions. And then our live wires, Rusty Harold, Halpern Gunn Johnson, Rob McLean, Alan Hohensee, J.R. Poole, who is not in Africa this week, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, and Casey Shafsky. Thank you all. You can do the Patreon too. It's patreon.com/Tuesdays Live. Go over. I have a $5 and a $10 level. Very simple. Comes out at the end of the month. We're a couple of weeks away, I guess. Appreciate all of that. Your support will be helpful and handy as we not only expand the archived video section, but hopefully figure out what's up with my good mic is not my good mic any longer. And a few other things we're doing here online on stream. I do want to mention before I forget, the Trek Files, though, is a Roddenberry podcast. It's up every Tuesday. We're back in season 9. Our new episode is up with returning guest Sandy Fries, who is a second season. Speaking of Leonard Maishlish, I believe Leonard comes up a time or two in this discussion. Anyway, the Trek Files is back. Andy, this is our third or fourth episode for the year. Third. You want to jump in with us? It's right there at podcast.roddenberry.com. That's where the show is. On Facebook with our documents of the week. You can get the audio anywhere you catch fine podcasting, anywhere. That's there. I'm around on the socials if you want to catch me. Larry Nemecek on Twitter, Larry Nemecek's Trekland, as you are. YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Please like, subscribe, ring the bell. All the YouTube stuff. We're trying to grow the YouTube channel as fast as you can. and you want to come to LarryNemecek.com to get caught up on everything I'm doing, including Geek Nation Tours West Coast away mission. Yeah, Armin, Tim, Bobby Clark, of course, and Mike Westmore are just the first round of guests. We're going to be announcing more from now through the end of the year, first of the year, as people's schedules come down and we can see who we can have with us. So check it out. It's a big one. It's a big one. We haven't done it in 2016. You want to start saving your pennies now. Or both. Take a custom trek with me. Come to LA. Check out treklandtreks.com. Or again, come to LarryNemecek.com. Check all that out and see what's going on. So everybody, hey, thanks for being on with us today. Thanks for continually supporting everything I do and we do. I'm going to have to get off my butt and find some new angles. I've already got a couple things I'm excited to bring up the next couple of weeks. Meanwhile, we'll keep an eye on what's going on screen. We'll catch what's up with those lower deckers and all their little self-referential Easter eggs they think they're going to bust out with. So between now and then, we'll see you next week. And if you're watching later, Tuesdays at 1, 4 Eastern, 9 UK time, 10 Central Europe, okay? And until that time, until we cross paths, however we do it, oh my gosh, folks, stay healthy, do all the things, stay woke, check the sources. It's going to get crazy here in the US between now and election season. It already is, sadly. I guess what I'm saying is, trek well, everybody.